Hello, everybody. It's the Old Man, and welcome to the Geeked Cast. Today we are talking music. Seamus had this brilliant idea, so I'm just going to kick it on over to him and let him introduce it.
I have a name, you know. Anyway, so my idea was that each month we would each take an album that we enjoyed for some reason or thought was interesting or worth looking at or just would be a bit of fun. And so we'd each take one. We would give each other our suggestion. We would each get one, or we each give each other one. We listen to them and then talk about them. Uh, so, shall we start off with Sam's?
Yeah, all right. So surprise, surprise, I picked a metal album for my album to talk about. Uh, there's a lot of subgenres to heavy metal, but my personal favorite is black metal. There's a certain level of presentation, showmanship, theme, and just the musical style, which I really enjoy. There's something really atmospheric about it, which I think is actually a running theme with all three of our albums. All of us seem to have picked really atmospheric types of music, which I find kind of interesting. But
We all
anyways,
picked sad music.
yeah. Anyways, my album is by the band Satyricon, and it's their ninth studio album called Deep Calleth Upon Deep. And I really, really enjoyed this. Satyricon, unlike a lot of other black metal bands, they don't try to convince you that they're busy summoning demons and spending all their time sacrificing virgins and shit. They are straightforward. They say it's just music, and
Dude,
we're going to
that's
keep
half
pumping
the
it out.
fun.
That is one thing, yeah. But Satyricon has a really good songwriting structure, which I really enjoy. Frost, their drummer, has this amazing ability for tempo changes, which he does so well in this album. And then, of course, lyrical content, the song structure by Satyr is awesome.
Yeah, I have a few things to say about your drummer. What about it made it, or what about this album made this stand out to you and say, I want to show other people this?
For the most part, it takes black metal and gives it like a lot of times black metal sound, like there's that sort of necro sound that Fenriz from Dark Throne and Varg were talking about in the documentary Until the Light Takes Us, where it essentially sounds like it was recorded on an answering machine inside of a cement truck.
Hmm.
The cool thing
That's
about
exactly why I hate black metal.
the cool thing about this album, though, like bands like Marduk and Satyricon, Dark Funeral, all of that, they actually embrace good production for their music. Although a lot of them did start out with bad production and bad quality, but this album, along with Diabolical Now and Volcano, are just really, really good, tight song structure type of music. And really, there's no filler songs with Satyricon, because a lot of bands, you'll be listening to an album and you'll be like, oh yeah, well, there's just that one song on the album that I could do without. Satyricon is really good at trimming the fat and not sort of, I guess, masturbating into their lyrics, into their music, by adding like long, huge, grandiose intros and stuff like that. It's sort of like one of my favorite bands, Inquisition. They just show up, start playing, and then it ends, and they tell you to deal with it, which I like.
Hmm. I will give you the point you made about production value. I will give you that. Most black metal that I've heard, they all have the same logo. Their albums are all identical with the dripping white paint, and it'll come on a it'll come on a CD that's cut in a novelty way to look like a ninja star or a
Yeah.
saw blade, and it'll fuck up your CD player in your car. So yes, it wasn't tinny. It does sound it sounds fairly clean.
It's another
have
thing too about
Question for you.
about the
Real
artwork that you mentioned though. Like, I mean, even the artwork in itself, it's simplistic, but it gets the point across, which
I have a
which
question
I do
real
like.
quick.
It's
And it's
minimalist.
kind of
What's up?
bad that the old man's asking this question. What the hell is a CD player?
It's like an 8-track, but it's
Oh,
you
fuck,
know,
I'm not that old.
it's an 8-track with lasers. Yeah,
I'm not that old. Come on.
you're, oh, soon you will join the ghosts of Rome. But
Good
yeah,
pull.
yeah, and I'll give the artwork something. It reminds me more of like an '80s goth thing, which kind of ties it into the band that I chose. Um, it doesn't uses the drippy font, uh, although I here's the part where I bitch about it. You know, I'll give it that. It's probably one of the better black metal albums that I've listened to. I guess like Jim, I'm not really made for black metal, and that I found a lot of it um, very, very repetitive. I saw certain tropes coming up quite a lot, such as there would be a break with the guitar riff, and you would get that dual pedal on the bass drum effect from the drummer. And I'm not sure what the purpose was. Like it just kind of like passed into the song and then it passed out without. It wasn't like building to anything or anything like that. Like you just had certain drums that just kind of like came in, like they were plugged in for some reason. I don't know why.
I disagree. That's one thing about Frost, though. It's transitioning, and it all does build into it. Like a lot of times with Satyricon, like you'll see certain drumming patterns for the hook, and then it'll come together at the chorus, and then clash at the very end of the song, which
They're
I
a black
like. I
metal
mean,
band. They shouldn't be hooks.
how much black metal do you listen
Hooks
to?
are too trendy. Hooks are too trendy.
How much
It's
black
too
metal
mainstream.
do you listen to?
What's wrong with hooks? You don't like G funk?
I'm lampooning the I don't know. I'm too tired to think of it. The so-called spirit of black metal, where it's not mainstream. Big shit with a lot of black metal's bands is like they eschew a lot of traditional or mainstream production values because
That's
they a lot of major metal bands as sellouts. That's like kind of how the whole subgenre got started.
I get that.
Why I
That's
laugh
kind
a
of the
little.
I get that, and like I said, that's kind of the controversy with Satyricon is they actually evolved past all of that, and like they were a pretty divisive band for that exact reason.
Well, that's why I'm laughing at the hook thing. It's just it's a humorous little joke. It's okay. We can move past it.
No, we're gonna stay here and we're gonna sort this out. No, we can go past that. Does everyone have a favorite or least favorite track?
So
Jim?
to tell you the truth, right? Like
Yes.
none of the tracks really stood out to me. But in this case, I kind of view it as a good thing. If I can listen to an entire album being memorable and enjoy the album thoroughly, me says that like it's a complete album, right? Like they actually put a lot of thought into the album as a whole. They didn't
you don't need a
couple
tentpole
songs.
single.
Right. Like I think one of like the biggest offenders to that I think is oh goodness, let me see if I can pick a well-known example.
Well, like any band from the last like 30 or 40 years, like fucking Wild Cherry, you know.
Yeah, Wild Cherry, I guess.
Oasis.
Well, right, yeah, like you've got of Journey albums were kind of like that, right? Like where they centered on one or two key songs, and then like you spend the rest of the album waiting to get to, right?
Yeah. I would, for Deep Calleth Upon Deep. Yeah, the songs are some. I seem to have. I don't know. Maybe it's because it was earlier on. I just remember it better, or because it's slightly shorter. You know, blood cracks open the ground.
I like that.
This seems to have stuck with me a bit more than the other ones. The one I really disliked was Black Wings and Withering Gloom. I was about 2 minutes in, and I was like, I've been here for half an hour. Like, I don't know where the time went, or where the time didn't go. I lived a whole lifetime, and which wasn't great. Or one thing, like songs that are, I'm kind of a believer in that. Like, there's kind of a reason songs have standardized lengths, like the 2.5 to 3.5 minute mark.
Mm.
It's like the only time you ever really get those 7 minute songs, it's like those are usually like the club mix essentially for pop songs.
Or classical pieces.
Yeah, or a classical piece which has a whole other production associated with it, like an opera or whatever.
Actually,
Yeah.
one really cool thing that you should check out. I should try to link it into the description on here. Is Satyricon did an entire concert with the Norwegian opera and symphony, and
that would be better suited to them, I would say.
It was really cool.
Yeah, but
Sorry to interrupt there, but yeah.
But that's an interesting point, because that is something that I would want to add to them. It's like they have these very like epic, grandiose lyrics, but it's like it is mostly like kind of like that grungy, thrashing on the guitar and the dual pedal, like very furious drumming. It's like, yeah, it probably could have used like a chorus, which if you're using a Norwegian opera, then that'd be pretty appropriate. Things about like the blood of our grandfathers and, warriors rising from the grave. That's what it needed. It needs that. It's like they should continue getting away from the classic black metal cheap production values and go more epic and more grandiose to suit kind of what they want their theme to be.
Yeah. For me, I had two favorites on this album. The first one was To Your Brethren in the Dark. I liked sort of like the slow, sort of doomy aspect to that. And Jim, you like a lot of the doom type stuff, so like it had that really sort of nice slow paced chugging stuff, which I enjoyed, and it built up really well. And then the other one that I liked was The Ghost of Rome. It had a nice build up that went into a good sort of like thrashy element, which I enjoyed.
It's also it's very strange to have Nordic influenced music talking about Ghosts of Rome. You think it would be like Ghosts of Scandinavia.
Well, I mean, they spent like 8 albums talking about that, so.
Oh, okay. See, I had not been exposed to this band prior to this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think it is time we move on to the album that I suggested, which would be Epic Garden Music by what is probably the greatest name that has ever been given to a sad post-punk, pre-goth band, Sad Lovers and Giants. And the reason I chose this is mainly because I had been listening to a lot of the band leading up to this. I've always had a bit of an interest there. I've always been a bit of a sad boy. And, I love The Cure and Morrissey and bands like this. And one interesting thing about the Sad Lovers and Giants album is that it captures like a lot of these themes, like the use of synth that you might hear in some later, New Order or The Cure or something like that. but it's like this is in 1981. You know, it seems very kind of ahead of the curve, and also the art is pretty great. It does reflect the music, and that it's the uh, dancing while crying kind of aesthetic. You know, it's all about decay. It's all kind of reminiscent of ancient ruins and graveyards. There's these very echoey vocals that you might get in some earlier post-punk stuff, and I think it's pretty compelling. They have a few bangers on it. Probably my favorite song of theirs, Seven Kinds of Sin, was not included. But otherwise, I think it's fairly solid. What did you people think?
I quite liked it.
Yeah. For the most part, I enjoyed it. Oddly enough, like I thought that it had a lot of similarities to certain black metal bands that I have, especially with the synths and the sort of atmospheric elements to it. Like I when I was listening to it, I heard like a lot of similarities to bands like say Emperor, for instance, how it sets up this sort of like mood of the song where, you know, you feel like you're in some sort of an ancient castle that's like some sort of evil presence is in there. That's kind of the sense that I got from it.
Yeah, like it has a little bit of a Joy Division feel. It's like or a X-Mal Deutschland. Uh, it's hard to describe. It's very
The way I would describe this album
musical graveyard.
Yeah, the way I would describe this album, because like the vocals are kind of like almost happy in a way, so it's almost like you're broken by like some crazy haunting experience, and then you just sort of embrace you kind of find this weird mad joy in depressing, scary shit.
Yeah, it's definitely you described it well. It is that kind of sense of the joy of reckless abandon. You know, like the happy nihilist. Jim, what are your thoughts?
I really liked it.
Ah.
Like you, I'm a fan of The Cure. Or at least I was. I kind of stopped listening to The Cure, well, anything new by The Cure, I should say, in 2004.
You stuck it along pretty. You stayed with it pretty long there.
Well, I didn't start getting into The Cure until I was in college, so like I got into The Cure like right before Bloodflowers, and then went like all the way to their self-titled. And I mean, I still listened to them for quite a while after their self-titled came out, but it was so long between releases that I kind of gave up on them. I found something shiny to look at. And fat, sad Robert Smith is not nearly as edgy, sad, skinny Robert Smith.
Yeah,
the whole goth depression thing works a lot better when you look like you either have a bad heroin habit or you haven't eaten in a week.
Yeah, it looks a lot better when you're under the age of 30. There's at my school there was we had this guy come in. He was a stop motion artist, and for the past 35 years he has been doing the new romantic thing, and he hasn't stopped, and he's still calling himself by his his goth party scene name, and it's he calls himself like Mozart or something like that. It does not work. It is a young man's game.
Yeah, it really is. But these are old men, or at least they are by now. Like they're still making music in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. But what I really liked about them, and I think you mentioned this, is that they it's all of the inventiveness and the moodiness of The Cure that we love, with like the tight production qualities that you would get from a band like Joy Division. Yeah. Right? Because like love or hate Joy Division, like you always got the sense that they knew what they were doing.
Yes. And there's plenty of reasons to hate Joy Division.
There's also a lot of reasons to love them too. With the Cure, right? Like sometimes you got the sense like they were making it up as they went, especially when you get an album with like Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, for example. I love to hate that album. It's an opening track, The Kiss. It's incredible, right? It is awesome. Like you did not know Robert Smith could shred until you listened to that song, and they go from that to like the sickeningly sweet, sappy ditty of a song.
That's
And
like
so
I love the sappiness. I think that's a very integral part to this kind of music.
and I like it, but it's like what I found in Sad Lovers and Giants that I did not find in The Cure were the epic mood swings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like these guys seem a lot more even keeled in their production and with their overall album theme, and that's what I really liked about it. I find that like a lot of like the changes and the mood swings in any band, which is one reason why, even though I love progressive rock, I have a hard time listening to a lot of the bigger bands like Yes, for example, because they're all over the place. There's no coherent, unifying structure, even within individual songs. And that always drives me crazy about a band. Like when you don't even know where you've been in the last 5 minutes, why do I trust you to take me forward?
Yeah. Yeah,
and so that's the thing. A lot of the Cure listenable.
Yeah, Sad Lovers and Giants doesn't seem to stray too far in either direction. I mean, maybe that's a mark against it in some ways, in that like I think me and Sam's album had like some commonality in that like they're very kind of like thematically and tonally consistent. Maybe a little too much. I don't know. It depends on how much you're into that specific genre or that specific mood.
It's kind of more minimalist, I'd say.
By the way, for anybody who's watching, I updated the video description with links on YouTube to each of the albums we're discussing. So if you want to get an idea of what we're talking about, go ahead and refresh the stream. And then go ahead and you can go ahead and click on any of the links to get an idea of what we're talking about, whether you enjoy post-punk, new wave, black metal, or my type of music, which we'll discuss in a little while.
Yeah, weird.
Do we really have to talk about Keisha?
Yes,
hey,
this would be a
now.
good time. This would be a good time to introduce our friend Stefan. And
Hey.
What brings you here, little man?
You know what? I actually I enjoy talking about music. I didn't realize that there was like a set like specific music we were discussing tonight, but that's pretty cool.
Well, right, we had this idea where we were going to exchange music within the cast, and maybe about once a month, go ahead and listen to these albums and then discuss them live in front of the audience.
How about while you're here, you give us one song. Give us one song that you think is interesting, worth looking at for one reason or another.
Oh wow, one song. Jeez.
It could be any song. It could be Michael Bublé's, on the track off his Christmas album.
I'll tell you, one of the most underrated songs, in my opinion, is like I'm a huge like '90s grunge fan, and like I grew up on like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, and Nirvana's Lounge Act, which was like a B-side track on their Nevermind album, is probably one of my favorite like Nirvana songs. I think it's really like underrated.
Is that the
I
Pretty
dig
Bad
that
Folks
one,
Go
yeah.
When They Die?
So what was it?
Is that where Bad Folks Go When They Die? Is that where that comes from?
No, it's I can't explain. You got to listen to it, I guess. I don't know. No, it's
I'll have to look it up.
You've probably never heard of it, like, but it's a really
Probably
kind of like,
never.
it constantly amps up.
You know,
Like every single time that it cycles through, to the chorus, it has more energy every single time until it just like Kurt Cobain is just like literally just screaming out the lyrics, and it's really intense.
Well, that's every Kurt Cobain song.
I have one question for you though.
No, sometimes he goes down.
Yeah.
I have one question for you though, since you're a huge fan of the '90s grunge movement, Nirvana in particular. What's your opinion of the Foo Fighters?
Uh-oh.
Oh, dude, you know what? I used to hate them because like when I first heard like the Foo Fighters, I think it was like the first like kind of main hit that they had was that I can't remember what it was called.
I
but it
got
was,
another confession to make. Thing.
no, it was the one that was like if you watch the music video, it was like a Mentos commercial. Talk about it, carry on. It's really poppy. It's really kind of like it's just and it's so everything Nirvana wasn't. It's terrible.
I really hate that band.
Yeah. And but I mean since then, I mean like I kind of wrote them off for a long time, and then you know, like I've heard some of their stuff since then. I've actually listened to a few of their albums. I wasn't a huge fan of Monkey Wrench. I think it was the first time I actually kind of really gave them kind of a chance was on that album. But going back and like listening to like Learn to Fly it's a pretty good song. They have a couple good ones, but
I would describe the
not
Foo
great.
Fighters. I would describe the Foo Fighters as uninspired elevator music. In fact, two things that get me up in the morning. One is beer, and it's sometimes too early to drink it, but it's never too early to think about it. The other one is the possibility that I might get to run into Dave Grohl and punch him in the face.
God, the Dave Grohl hatred coming out of you.
The two things that get me out of bed in the morning is coffee and knowing that I'll get to listen to Freak Gen sometime during the next 12 hours.
The only thing that gets me out of bed.
How is that for a segue?
I like
that was a segue.
Yeah. Go ahead and talk about your acid music.
All right. So I'm a big fan of electronic music, among other things. Like I like prog rock, I like heavy metal. But I think electronic music was like my first love. Ever since like the old MIDI synthesizer soundtracks to early '90s video games, it's been my thing. So there's a musician from the Detroit area where I grew up. His name is Clayton, and he has several projects. His main one is Cell Dweller, which some of you may have heard of. But he has some side projects. Scandroid, which is like 80s synthwave. Circle of Dust, which was his first project, which is kind of like an industrial metal, vaguely religious themed. And then the one that I just mentioned is Freak Gen, Frequency Generator. And it's his kind of it's his take on like kind of like I guess like deep house, ambient, chill out techno from like the late 80s and early 90s. So I pawned this off on Sam and Seamus. And I wasn't quite sure what to expect as far as reactions go. So I'm really curious to see what you guys think of it.
Like, surprise, techno is not my favorite genre.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah. The only kind of techno that I got into, it was actually something that you showed me when we were growing up. Trance, I think it's called, where people like Andy Hunter and Tiesto, like they had this cool method of remixing certain beats and instrumental, which I thought was really, really cool, and they'd actually incorporate instrumental. As far as this goes, it wasn't bad as far as techno goes. I mean, for me personally, I don't know much about this genre, so I'm totally like, this is totally subjective. But one track that did stand out, what was it? Storm on Jupiter or some shit like that. Like I felt like that track could have been in a fucking Stanley Kubrick film. That was really, really cool. And like if anybody like makes a weird sci-fi horror type thing, like that track would fit so well. It was really, really cool, and just a lot of like atmosphere and attitude in it.
Yeah, I
It
would
is one of the
agree that
things-
it belongs.
Oh, go ahead, dude.
Or, I'd say I would agree that it does belong in a Stanley Kubrick movie. I would not say that it belongs in an album that I would sit and listen to. Or it didn't feel like. I'll just say what I have to say here. It it didn't feel like when I think of an album, I think of just something that you can kind of like sit and enjoy and listen to and look at the album artwork. This felt like something to another purpose. Like it felt like the soundtrack to like a movie or a video game, particularly something like Quake, something that would have that dark late '90s Matrix-esque kind of electronica. And so like of the stuff that was actually music on the album, like I was kind of into, because same as Jim, electronic music was my first love. Gary Newman's Living in Cars was like the thing that made me go like, oh hey, this is something that I like that my parents did not introduce me to. But I don't know, this is like notes from a larger project, so like I don't need to sit and listen to 17 minutes of low droning.
I never really knew what the appeal to like house or electronic music or like just the.
I think in general it's supposed
yeah.
to be an ambience of some kind. Sorry to interrupt, but I felt like, I don't know, this could work really well while you're performing a task or just something in the background.
And that's exactly what it is. Because Jim, the reason you listen to most things is because you're doing something else. Like you're basically
exactly.
You're playing Quake or Doom with the sound off and listening to this. So it is very, very, very good filler.
There was a Key and Peele skit like that when they're listening to, I don't know what it was like Skrillex type shit. But what's that called again? There's a special name for that.
Dubstep.
I hate
dubstep
so much.
Yeah, it was about how dubstep makes everything more intense, and like so they're listening to dubstep while like packing his house for a move, and every single time like the bass would kick in, they'd start like just smashing things, and
dubstep is to electronic music as Limp Bizkit is to metal.
Right.
Oh,
dubstep
okay. Well, then I apologize.
It's the meat-headed bro of electronic music.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it is like 90% lead ups.
Yeah.
Lead ups and bass.
And then like 10%.
Like essentially dubstep just sounds like the sound design that they used in the Transformers movies every time that they morph into a machine, into a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's like
right.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there's a place for a lead up to a bass drum, right? But when your entire song is that over and over again, it's kind of like the only thing that dubstep, in my opinion, is good for is to keep you motivated while you're powerlifting for time.
I don't know. I listen to sad post-punk while I'm lifting.
I listen to Cannibal Corpse when I lift. So
when you look at more of like the type of music that Freak Gen is, you think more like the ambient music that you get with something like Tangerine Dream or Brian Eno, Steve Roach.
You're listening to the Windows startup sound.
Yeah, it's very beatless.
On the just on like the workout music note is that I actually can't work out to the music that I like. It's really weird, like because and it has to do, I think, a lot to do with like just like the tempo of a lot of like like the kind of like the alternative kind of garage music that I like to listen to. That
Right.
I don't think it really flows well with like with trying to get myself pumped up for something, and like for the longest time, just kind of a weird thing. When
I
I'd
tried
work,
lifting weights while listening to Alice in Chains, and it just
no, it doesn't work. It doesn't
No,
work
yeah.
at all.
Alice in Chains.
when
is
you're up
something
there on the bench trying to PR, and they're like, "They come just off the rooster." This doesn't.
I
work.
mean, I tried
Jesus.
everything. Like
Why the fuck?
like I was
Jim, why
listening.
the
Like
fuck
I
are we
actually
on the same
downloaded.
wavelength? I was just
Oh,
thinking
sorry.
about the rooster.
Like
Well,
I actually
Alice-
downloaded like one of those like Jock Jams albums to try to like like lift to that stuff, and like I just hated the music too much to do it.
If you want a
that's
really,
the kind of genre the Foo Fighters are.
if you want a really good jock jam, it's the ultimate jock jam. Listen to Neil Cicierega's. It's on his most recent album, and it's called Shit. And basically he's a guy who does mashup tracks, and he combines Spice Girls with Pretty Fly for a White Guy with
Oh,
a bunch of other shitty jock jam music, and it forms a very high tempo and very exciting, very catchy.
speaking of mashup music, though, do any of you guys listen to Pogo?
No.
Because you should.
Oh, is that shit that you showed me where it was a remix of Thriller? And then you're all like, Sam,
No.
you're probably too young to recognize this. I was like, this is fucking Michael Jackson, dude. Who doesn't know this?
No,
Little
Pogo-
children in Africa recognized Michael Jackson because he came and saw
Pogo,
them in their homes.
Shit,
He
Space
makes
Aliens
music
recognize
out
Michael
of
Jackson.
sounds and snippets of dialogue from movies, mostly Disney films.
So he's essentially Stomp, but with lyrics.
Just look it up. Just trust me on this one. Look it up.
You
You
heard
won't
it
be
here
sorry.
first. Look up Pogo, all you viewers at home.
You know, I just got one thing to say. Like, the magnus opus of any music ever is a little song by a great band
Rush.
down under called Men
Oh.
at Work.
Rush.
Oh boy, oh boy.
The land down under.
I've been exposed to that song too fucking much. I used to like it, now I hate it. It plays incessantly in Saints Row 2. The show that I worked on, they used it in a series of jokes because we did a number of episodes about Australia. You
Rush.
brought it up
Just listen to
constantly.
Rush.
I'll give it to you. Rush is good. Like, that's probably Canadians' one good export.
That and professional ice hockey.
That's because you guys haven't heard the Tragically Hip.
Although I'll never forgive you for giving us Avril Lavigne and Justin Bieber. You fucking
No,
Canucks.
Yeah, but dude, we foisted Eminem and Kid Rock on the rest of the world. So it's not like we really had
Okay, that
anything
man's
to brag
gonna be
about.
your senator. But
You know, I
No,
I
dude,
miss
it was all
the
a lie.
days- I miss the days
I
when
know, it was
Eminem
bullshit.
had balls, because at least I respected him then. But I digress.
Yeah. But speaking of Canadian exports, this is kind of a lead up to what would be next month's discussion. How familiar are you guys with Mac DeMarco?
I'm gonna be honest with you,
What?
I've never heard of that at all. So you kind of have
Perfect.
your hipster card.
Yeah. So that'll be a little hint. I'm going to choose a specific. It'll probably be Mac DeMarco's second album, I believe. Rock and Roll Nightclub sucks, but the one after it, I think it's just called Mac. I think it's just called 2, like letter 2. It has the same cover as fucking Springsteen cover. It's black and white, blue text. Anyway, that'll be for next month. So yeah, plenty of time to listen to, and we'll have more time to kind of memorize these things. We did this kind of spur of the moment. This is only a once a month thing. The next time we meet, it'll probably be me and Sam talking about the Disaster Artist, or all three of us and Stefan and whoever wants to come,
You know,
discussing grim
if
dark
all-
versus funny serious.
if all goes
ahead.
well, my girlfriend and I should be going to see the Disaster Artist tomorrow night as sort of an exam de-stressor for her.
Yeah, maybe we could do a Saturday or Sunday. Maybe we could do a discussion.
Or we could do like what we did for Blade Runner, where after the movie, I have a couple of drinks, then we log on and talk about it.
Yeah, I'm always in the process of having a couple drinks. Which, by the way, this cast is brought to us by Melios. The fun thing about Melios is that not only is it Greek, but it tastes like a fucking bell pepper. Like, people say that, oh, the wine tastes like blackberries and chocolate, and it's complete bullshit because there's only one ingredient. But this actually tastes like peppers.
You know, I forgot what the brand was, but there was a pomegranate wine that I tried once, and it was really damn good. And it had like a werewolf on the label.
Sounds
I
like
liked it.
most brands of mead.
Yeah, it was nice. This podcast is brought to you by Founders All Day IPA.
Not bad.
Yeah, it's a nice session beer if you're not trying to get too fucked up. You know,
It's a good session beer if you're at a pizza place in New York. That's mostly where they seem to serve it.
It sounds nice. New York
And-
pizza is really good. I don't like crust that's like outrageously spongy thick. So New York is good with that.
I'd say, have you ever been to NYC?
No.
Yeah, because I would say actually, there's like New York style pizza.
Mhm.
Like I'd say, New York pizza is bullshit. The best pizza is from Connecticut, Southern Connecticut, the Panhandle, because like Massachusetts, you get the really spongy stuff, but you have Boston Bay, you have Connecticut pizza, and it's the perfect balance. And you get lots of toppings. The stuff you get here, it costs, $1.50. And 2 slices will make you fucking sick because there's this horrible grease coming off of it. It's not great. What makes the crust unique is that there's a bunch of decaying insects inside of the pipes here. So their carcasses, their shells are building up. And that's what makes that. Anyway, Jim, your thing is making a fuck ton of sound. Are you standing next to a humidifier or something?
Yeah, sorry. Let me turn that off real quick.
You're not the Canadian in the group.
Yeah, sorry about that, Jim. Only I can apologize.
Yes, apologize for disturbing us. Anyway,
Apologize for being born, you Canuck.
yeah, in the meantime, before Jim gets back, Stefan, who would win in a fight? The corpse of the lead singer of Alice in Chains or the corpse of the lead singer of Nirvana?
Oh, jeez. I mean, if they were being animated
Staley
purely
versus
by,
Kurt Cobain.
yeah, I mean, if they were being animated purely by the cocaine that remains in their system, Kurt Cobain.
Even without a head?
I disagree. Kurt Cobain was kind of a pussy.
What was the question?
Who would win in a fight, the corpse of Lane Staley or the corpse of Kurt Cobain?
Oh, Staley, by far, hands down.
Ooh, we're divided.
Like the difference
Thank
between
you.
Staley and Cobain is like Cobain self-destroyed or self-destructed on purpose. Staley embraced it and raced to the bottom.
Thank you. Like Kurt Cobain was a whiny little bitch. He was a good musician, a good songwriter, but he was a fucking whiner.
To be fair, like Kurt Cobain didn't get to be annoying as a person until Courtney Love. He ruined everything. Sound familiar?
And quick poll, who thinks Courtney Love murdered him?
I don't know. I don't get into like the like the whole conspiracy thing. It's there's actually a really good argument for why she could have, but I can't remember who. I was watching an interview with somebody about this recently, and because there's like a documentary that was just recently made, and his view is just like it's all bullshit. Like he committed suicide.
Here's a fun fact about Courtney Love. Right after they filmed Batman and Robin, Joel Schumacher was planning a sequel where Nicolas Cage would play Scarecrow and Courtney Love would play Harley Quinn, which was supposed to be the daughter of the Joker in this continuity, and they were off for revenge against Batman for killing the Jack Nicholson Joker.
I'm up for revenge against them for having that idea.
Well, you know, it never happened because, you know,
It would have been a great movie.
bad credit cards and shit. But could you imagine Nicolas Cage as Scarecrow? Like, you wouldn't even have to put on the fucking mask.
Want to imagine Nicolas Cage as Scarecrow, all right?
How about a little fire, Scarecrow? Yeah.
To think he was almost Superman, the best Superman ever.
Yeah, that would have been the best fucking movie ever.
I would have bought every edition of that DVD and then a couple more too.
Honestly, all that would, because I haven't seen Justice League yet. The only two things that'll save me for this movie is one, if like you just see a fist come out of Superman's grave and Nicolas Cage flies out at the camera going, "Ha!" And two, if Jesse Eisenberg is Lex Luthor, like he's being spooned and cuddled by some inmate in prison, and you can see that prison has really broken him, and then a guard like rattles his baton on the cage walls, and he goes, "Luthor, get up! You have a visitor." And he's escorted to like the visitor center, all whimpering. And he picks up the phone receiver, and then you see the shiny bald head of a man. And you hear Bryan Cranston's voice say, "So I still see you stole my look, Junior. Let me show you how a real Luthor does business."
I just want a Superman who will say, "Oh, not the kryptonite! No!"
I assume by that it's a reference to The Wicker Man.
Yeah.
Yes. A wonderful movie.
Which was an amazing movie.
Or like every time he uses,
I enjoyed it quite thoroughly.
Every time he uses his heat vision, he goes, "How to get burned? How to get burned? How to get burned?"
You know what's great about The Wicker Man? Not to like derail the subject again, but like
We got
I
4
remember
minutes.
watching it, and you know how some horror films, like if you watch the original Wicker Man, like you leave that movie feeling genuinely creeped out.
Mhm.
Right. I left the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man just feeling dirty,
That I leave it feeling
but in a good way.
pretty good. Yeah.
I'll say this though. I vastly prefer Christopher Lee in a skirt than I did, or in drag than I did to anything else.
The best part of just I'll give 1 point to Christopher Lee, and then we gotta wrap up. I was watching one of my guilty pleasures, or not a guilty pleasure, I do it to make fun of these people, is watching things like Stupendous Wave or all of these Star Wars lore YouTube channels. They had one of, why did Count Dooku not have the orange Sith eyes? The answer is obviously Christopher Lee didn't want to put in the contact lenses. So they had to come up with this whole expanded universe justification as to why that was. But yeah, but
I like the Stupendous Wave though.
I know.
Yeah, I like them too.
I'll send you this thing about the Sith Inquisitors. He sounds exactly like the Kids in the Hall character Gavin, in which he's saying like, you know, he's like, and the Sith Inquisitors were masters of terror, which is exactly like, there's this girl at my school, and she lives alone, and she took all of the numbers off of her house, so the police can't find her. And anyway, I guess you want me to paint your chair now. He sounds exactly like that character. Yeah, there's this monster going around, and nothing can kill it because it has a metal head.
Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end the live portion of this broadcast. Thanks for tuning in, all one of you.
Yeah.
Go ahead and click that like button and definitely subscribe, share with your friends, because we're a small channel, but we're trying to get bigger. Of course, regular content might help with that.
And,
so
you know,
if you're still stuck with us over the last 2 months, we really appreciate it.
And, you know, if you don't click that like button or subscribe, then may the Dark Lord curse you.
Actually, I can think of something even worse, and that is may you be doomed to listen to nothing but
The Foo Fighters.
LMFAO for the rest of your life.
Skrillex.
The Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
The Foo
Skrillex.
Fighters.
Yeah.
So, on behalf of the Geekcast and all of our guests, I'm the old man signing off.